Let's be consistent.
Welcome to the Key to Consistency podcast. I am your host, Rakia Collins, and today we are going to be discussing how we can be more consistent with the goals that we set, right? So, of course, if you're listening to this podcast, you are trying to learn more about how to be consistent in your life. And today's topic is going to be focusing specifically on goals and how we can structure our goals in a way to ensure that we are successful in achieving them. Right? It doesn't matter if your goal is to build a better relationship with your family members, if you are trying to climb the corporate ladder, write better, whatever your goal is, right? There is a system and a methodology that you can follow in order to be a better goal setter. And of course, with the theme of our podcast, consistency, as we talk about goals and really begin to dissect this topic, we're going to be able to weave in the role that consistency plays when we think about how we are going to set our goals. And so the first topic that I want to address with you guys today is the intent and the purpose of setting goals and making sure that our goals are clear and that they are specific, right? So I think sometimes when, as humans, of course, we get these flashes of inspiration and we suddenly want to, climb Mount Kilimanjaro, right? As an extreme example, right? Or if we take it down to a regular example, we say, hey, I may be a staff accountant and I want to become a senior accountant, right? Whatever your goal is, you have to make sure that it's clear to you that, we're not, at this point, we're not focusing on, being specific. We're not focusing on being measurable. At this point, we're just making sure that our goal is clear to us, that we know exactly what we're trying to achieve, right? So I'm going to parallel this with giving you guys a very clear example, right? Current state in my life, although one of my goals is to become an entrepreneur, while I am working a 9 to 5, I have a goal of continuing to progress in my role as I build my business on the side. And so what does that look like? For me, in my job, I'm currently a manager. It looks like me progressing to senior management, right? That is a clear goal. I'm clear on I want to go from a manager to a senior manager, right? And so once we have our eyes kind of set on this goal, it is very clear to us. We know exactly what we're after. The next layer is to be specific, right? What specifically do you need to accomplish in order to get to your ultimate goal? And so, in the example I gave earlier, some of the specifics that I can do in order to go from manager to senior manager, again, in my specific world that I work in, it is, as a senior manager, you are more definite in the decisions that you make, because those decisions are not just for you, they're for an entire team of people, right? When you are a senior manager, you have more visibility into upper management. And so you have to go through and in those rooms with the mindset of, I'm making decisions that are for the betterment of my team. And you also have to understand how to deal with pressure on an entirely different level, right? And so what are some specific things that I can do in order to put myself in those rooms earlier? One thing you can always do is you can raise your hand, right? Whenever we're trying to, especially in this scenario that I'm giving where we're talking 9 to 5, you have in most cases a manager who you can tap on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm raising my hand. I want more responsibility. I want to be promoted to another level, given hopefully that you do have a supportive manager who's able to, support you in your upward trajectory, you're able to be exposed to those rooms or be exposed to those types of conversations, even if you're just going to be a fly on the wall, right? You get a lot from just being in a room. Even if you're not speaking, you're picking up the language, you're being exposed to, environments and conversations that you might not have been exposed to otherwise. And I know for some of you guys, you're like, that doesn't sound realistic for my scenario because my manager doesn't, look at me that way, or my environment, isn't that inclusive. And my manager, if I tap them on the shoulder and said I want a responsibility, they may think I want their job. And that is a reality. Not everyone works in an environment that is positive and that, promotes upward mobility. Some environments are truly, negative. And so in that specific scenario, if you are still trying to progress, I'd recommend still watching. And even if you're not necessarily in the room, you can still gain an understanding of your specific role, right? You can learn deeper and you can become an expert in exactly what it is that you do day to day. Most of us, if we're being honest, if we work a 9 to 5, we know enough about our job to do our job, and that's it, right? And so if, again, you're in this situation that I'm currently in where you do want to continue to progress in your current environment, in your current work environment, I would just encourage you to take that as the specific piece of advice that you can do. Either tap your manager on the shoulder and say, hey, I want to do more, I want to be more, can you help in this? Can we come up with a strategy? Or just become a better expert in what you currently do. Because irrespective of your environment, one thing I've come to realize in the years I've been walking this earth is you can't ignore expertise. You can't ignore someone who is dominant in what they do, right? And once you become that person on your team, and once people begin to see you as that because your work product is so excellent, it's hard to ignore that. Right. So I know we kind of went off on a tangent in that 9 to 5 specific scenario, but hopefully that helps someone when you think about, expanding your goals and becoming very specific. And so, if you have been in, high school, college, corporate, what I'm describing is not new to you. You may know it as the SMART way of goal setting. For those of you guys who don't know, SMART is also an acronym outside of it being a word. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, right? So when we're thinking about setting those clear and specific goals, it is important that your goal is specific. Again, in my example, I want to go from a manager to a senior manager, that it is measurable. Like, what am I able to measure in order to get to that specific goal of becoming a senior manager, right? Is your goal achievable, right? Is it relevant? Is it time bound? I don't want to have 2-3 years to get to that goal, right? If I'm being honest, it's June as I'm recording this. My goal is to become a senior manager by August when we go through our next round of performance evaluations, right? And so what can I do and what have I been doing to make sure that I reach my goal? This isn't a goal that just came as of June, of course. This is a goal I've had since I became a manager. And so ideally, right, it's like, what can you do in your day-to-day to make sure that when you set your eyes on something, and it doesn't have, same as my example, when we're thinking about, the upward mobility in your 9 to 5, if you are an entrepreneur, how are you setting your goals? Are you setting your goals consistently? Are you leveraging a method like the SMART method in order to create your goals? Really, the main thing I want to call out about this way of setting goals is that your goals have to be clear and specific, right? If your goals are not clear and specific, the likelihood of you achieving them is going to be slim to almost none because you haven't done what it takes in order for you to have a clear roadmap to your end goal, right? So that's the first major topic that I wanted to address as it relates to consistency and goal setting. This episode is sponsored by yours truly, Rakia Collins. And if you need to be reminded to stay consistent throughout your entire day, there's no better way to do that than to have visual cues throughout your day, right? And for those visual cues, visit our merch shop. We have phone cases that remind you to be consistent. We have coffee mugs that remind you about the importance of consistency. And so visit our site at thekeytoconsistency.com, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. The next one is really going to be the habits and the routines that you can build to help you achieve those goals. And this is really where consistency comes into play, right? And so I want to pause here because I really want you guys to understand the importance and the criticality behind consistent habits and routines as you're creating your goals. So I know, my previous example was around work, but let's take it from work and let's put it to our health, specifically going to the gym, right? If you have a goal that says, hey, I want to lose 100 pounds, right? That is a clear goal. You clearly know what you want, right? But we also need to put in many milestones to get to that goal of 100 pounds. Your first mini milestone could be, let me try to lose 2 pounds in a week, right? And so that is an achievable goal, right? 2 pounds this week. What does that look like? That looks like, well, I need to probably assess my diet and figure out, what am I eating on a day-to-day basis, right? Am I in a caloric deficit? Number 2, I need to start going to the gym, right? And what does going to the gym look like realistically? It may look like one day you pull up to the gym and you go in, you're on the treadmill for 10 minutes and then you leave. And that's no joke. Like, that is very serious, because when you begin to start building consistency, again, especially on this podcast, consistency is not taking these huge milestone type of leaps. It is small and deliberate, small and steady. So even if you have to go to the gym and you do a treadmill walk for just 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. The reason why it doesn't matter is because you did what you said you were going to do, which is you're going to go to the gym. Period. And you did that. It doesn't matter how much time you spend to the gym, right? Like, you have to understand, especially when you're first starting your weight loss goal, your body, anything that's different like that, your body takes that into account and it's drastic and it's different. Right? And so I say that, and I want to be very specific on that point, because I don't want you to look at, man, I only went to the gym and I only did 10 minutes as a bad thing. It is a phenomenal thing. Why? Because once you do that on day 1, on day 2, you may spend an additional 5 minutes. You may decide you want to, maybe not do just the treadmill, but you may also decide that you want to go into, strength training, right? Like, you may decide, okay, I may want to do a HIIT workout or routine, right? Like, you deciding and making the decision for yourself that I'm going to start small and be consistent, even if in your mind you feel like, man, this is nothing. You have to have confidence enough in yourself over that voice. Because if you do that, if you go to the gym and you are on the treadmill for just 10 minutes and you begin to talk negative to yourself, like, man, I could have done more, compared to who, right? Compared to what? You have to understand that when you're on this goal setting journey, you're not comparing your goals to anyone else. You're not comparing your starting place to anyone else, right? You are, for lack of a better scenario or a better analogy, you are working in the dark by yourself, right? It's not going to be pretty. Every day is not going to be, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm on top of the world today. Some days you may miss the mark, right? If you know one day you want to be able to do 30 minutes on a treadmill, right, without stopping, it starts with a minute, to be honest. Every time you hit the start button on the treadmill, it starts at the same time, 0. And so I say that because I really want to encourage you guys that as you're on this journey, you have to be in a mental space to say, I am going to start small. If my goal is to lose 100 pounds, which was again our original goal, we're going to break that down to what can I do week 1? I can make sure week 1 I'm in a caloric deficit. I can make sure week 1 I go to the gym at least one day out of that week, right? And I can take that huge goal of 100 pounds and say week 1 I want to lose 2 pounds, and these are the 2 actions I'm going to take. I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to make sure that I'm eating properly. That's it. Right? Like that is a realistic example of how you can take a larger goal and really begin to break it down to make sure that you're not feeling overwhelmed, that you're not going to lose lack of motivation. Because while we're building our habits and consistencies, we have to understand that looking at what you can do small today is how you start being consistent. And that's hopefully, as you guys are listening to these podcasts, something that you can walk away with, that you get one actionable step to say, you know what, I can do that today, right? I can set a goal today and I can break that goal down today. Even if you just use your iPhone or use your Android device or use your smartphone or a pen and a pad, honestly, and you say, I'm gonna write down my goal, I'm gonna break this goal down. You're already on the path, right? And so making sure that we incorporate those, smaller tasks into our daily routines is what's ultimately going to lead us to success. Making sure that every single day, if we go back to our weight loss example, that we are identifying pockets of time throughout the day to really allow us to orient ourselves, right? If we go back to our weight loss example, do you have an app on your phone that allows you to track what you ate that day? And I know tracking what you eat, depending on who you speak to, is a very touchy topic, right? Like some people are like, that's too much, that's extreme. But if you know yourself and you know at minimum, I need to be able to track, at least starting out, right? Once you get going, and you feel the wind beneath your wings, if you will, you may not need to track anymore. But starting out, if you need to go to that level. And if you do, I can tell you the app that I use is called Lose It. LOSE space IT ! They do have a free version of that app that allows you to, look at your meals and put them in the tracker, and you can track and see, you can put your goals in there, and it'll, kind of give you the predictions of how much you need to eat based on, your weight and your height and all that good type of stuff. So hopefully for the second point, you guys really understand goal setting and having a SMART goal outlined is not enough. You have to back up that goal with consistent habits and routines that can be broken down into smaller tasks and really incorporated as much as possible into your daily routine, right? And then the last thing that I'd love to chat with you guys about is overcoming challenges and staying persistent. There is nothing like creating a goal, telling yourself you're going to do something, and then not doing it. That feeling is an internal feeling, and it is the worst because you begin to feel like you've lost confidence within yourself for that moment. And then, with that comes next time. I'll do it next time, or I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes next week, and next week becomes next month, and then it becomes next year, and then it becomes a never, right? And I say that because we all know about New Year's resolutions, and we all start off January 1. This is the year. This is the year, specifically around weight loss. And I know I keep going back to weight loss, but there was a study I recently came across where I believe it's February 1st or February 15th. That is when most people who get that gym membership on January 1 stop going by February 1st or February 15th, because the goal wasn't ingrained in them to that level. And when challenges came, the ability to stay persistent wasn't there. And so if you're listening to this podcast, I know something about you is that you've recognized that about yourself, and you're trying to overcome that. What happens when I hit a wall? Like, I want to know how to deal with setbacks, because they're going to happen. Setbacks, distractions, self-doubt, it's all going to happen. Why? Because we're all human. And so some ways that we can help deal with those type of challenges as they come is, as you're writing down your goal on that same piece of paper, on that same notepad, you have to write down why this is even your goal. Like, why is this even important to you? Like, what's going to change once you accomplish this? Because if a goal is just a goal written down on a piece of paper and there is no emotion attached to it, or as Simon Sinek refers to it, there's no why behind it, it's not going to last. And so we want to avoid that by getting ahead of that. We want to know where the traps are as much as we possibly can, right? And then we want to avoid them. And so by writing down your goal, and then next to that goal, writing down the why is this my goal? Why do I want to accomplish this? That right there is going to ensure that you are set up for success when those challenges arise, because they will come. I'd also encourage you, as you start your journey, you focus on shifting your mindset. And that is critical, and that is hard. I am not going to pretend. Mindset shifting is not going to be easy, especially as an adult, because as adults, we've already gotten certain things ingrained in us. They say once you are over the age of 25, you as a human are pretty much set in stone. Your habits, your ways, your tendencies. Well, I don't believe that. And if you're listening to this podcast, we don't believe that. Look, I'm telling you that we don't believe that. We believe that you are still alive. You are still a malleable human. You can still do exactly what it is that you want to do, which is why I say it'll be hard. Because again, we have to recognize scientists have said that for a reason. Research has shown that. And so while we can have a different belief, we also have to come to face with the reality of this is a study for a reason. Scientists are saying this for a reason. This isn't just something that they made up, right? And so when those setbacks happen, when that self-doubt happens, when those distractions happen, number one, kind of going back to our last podcast, make sure that you have a support group with you, a support group or just a support person, someone to be there for you when you're not really feeling like it, right? Someone that, if we go back to our weight loss example, knows you're trying to lose weight and can check in on you, whether it's weekly, whether it's daily, whatever cadence you guys decide is going to be perfect for you guys, making sure that you set up yourself for success by not doing it alone, especially if it is something like a huge goal that you know the likelihood of you getting this by yourself would be a little tough. We want to be mindful of that, and we want to make sure that we are set up for success by having a supportive community around us. Also, going back again to that weight loss example, once you go to the gym that first day one, celebrate those small wins. Don't be afraid to celebrate. And by celebrate, I don't mean go out and get something to eat, because I know a lot of us associate celebrations with food. But celebrate by whether it's, hey, I'm going to, watch an extra 30 minutes of my favorite show today because I went to the gym this morning. Or, hey, I'm going to, buy this candle because this is what I wanted. Or, whatever a small win, a small healthy win, I do want to emphasize healthy, looks like for you. Making sure that as you're going along your journey, you celebrate those wins, that you're not so caught up in the big picture of things that you forget to celebrate. I'm different than what I was yesterday. Because you went to the treadmill and walked for 10 minutes, you are different than the person you were yesterday, because you've taken a step in the direction of building consistency. I hope that you guys found some nuggets of wisdom in today's episode, that as you are building out your SMART goals, you put next to those goals the why behind those goals, that you weave these goals into your daily routine, so it's not just something that you can put on a refrigerator, but it's something you're constantly monitoring to make sure that you're on track. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, don't forget to have an accountability partner or a support group. Again, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at The Key to Consistency. Would love to be that for you. Would love to be that support person, that accountability partner, just to make sure that you are on the right path and that you do not quit and that you do not give up. We are building consistency together, you guys. We are going to be better humans today than we were yesterday. And of course, as we do in every podcast, I do want to end this podcast with one of my favorite Bible verses, Proverbs 16:3. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. So as we're setting these goals, as we're making sure that our goals, align with where we want to be, let's also make sure that we run these plans to the master planner, right? And that we make sure that our goals are in alignment with what He has for our lives. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and remember, consistency breeds mastery, and mastery transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. And until next time, bye guys. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of The Key to Consistency. We'd love for you to review this podcast wherever you are listening to it. Please feel free to follow us on Instagram at thekeytoconsistency.com. And if you enjoyed this episode and you found something that was beneficial to you, of course, please share it with a friend and someone else that you think would benefit from starting their own consistency journey.